Okay. All right. Shabbat Shalom. We are back. We are getting ready to get into this Torah study for the week. Let me share this screen here as we get ready to get into it. Okay. All right. This week, we will be dealing with the Red Heifer. The Red Heifer. Numbers chapter 19. We have been going through Numbers, dealing with the things going on with the people of Israel in the wilderness. And here we are at Numbers 19. We want to, I think what we want to do is go ahead and read through the verses, and then we will come back and look at some key points inside of the verses here. So if somebody wants to start reading here, I think we got these slides here. I got the verses up on the screen, or you can read from whatever verse scripture you got there. You want to go ahead and read?
Yeah. Well, what part?
That's the scriptures there. You got that? Or it don't matter. You can just read whatever version you got.
Okay. Yeah, just a little closer. So I'll use this. All right. Numbers chapter 19. And Yahweh spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, This is the ordinance of the law which Yahweh hath commanded, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they bring thee a red heifer without spot, wherein is no blemish, and upon which never came yoke. And ye shall give her unto Eleazar the priest, that he may bring her forth without the camp, and one shall slay her before his face. And Eleazar the priest shall take of her blood with his finger and sprinkle her blood directly before the tabernacle of the congregation 7 times. And one shall burn the heifer in his sight, her skin and her flesh and her blood, with her dung shall he burn. And the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet, and cast it in the midst of the burning of the heifer. Then the priest shall wash his clothes, and he shall bathe his flesh in water, and afterward he shall come into the camp, and the priest shall be unclean until even. And he that burneth her shall wash his clothes in water, and bathe his flesh in water, and shall be unclean until even. And the man that is unclean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer, and lay them up without the camp in a clean place, and it shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel, for a water of separation. It is a purification for sin. And he that gathereth the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes, and be unclean until evening, and it shall be unto the children of Israel and unto the stranger that sojourneth among them for a statute forever. He that touches the dead body of any man shall be unclean 7 days. He shall purify himself with it on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he shall be clean. But if he purifieth not himself on the 3rd day, then the 7th day he shall not be clean. Whosoever toucheth the dead body of any man that is dead, and purifieth not himself, defileth the tabernacle of Yahweh, and that soul shall be cut off from Israel, because the water of separation was not sprinkled upon him. He shall be unclean. His uncleanliness is yet upon him. This is the law when a man dieth in a tent. All that is come into the tent and all that is in the tent shall be unclean 7 days. And every open vessel which have no covering bound upon it is unclean. And whatsoever toucheth one that is slain with a sword in an open field, or a dead body, or bone of a man, or a grave, shall be unclean 7 days. And for an unclean person, they shall take of the ashes of the burnt heifer of purification for sin, and running water shall be put thereto in the vessel. And a clean person shall take hyssop and dip it in the water, and sprinkle it upon the tent, and upon the vessels, and upon the persons that were there, and upon him that touched a bone, or slain, or one dead, or a grave. And a clean person shall sprinkle upon the unclean on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day. And on the 7th day he shall purify himself, and wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and shall be clean at even. But the man that shall be unclean, and shall not purify himself, that soul shall be cut off from among the congregation, because he hath defiled the sanctuary of Yahweh, and the water of separation hath not been sprinkled upon him. He is unclean. And it shall be a perpetual statute unto them that he sprinkleth the water of separation. But he that sprinkleth the water of separation shall wash his hands, and he that toucheth the water of separation shall be unclean until evening. And whatsoever the unclean person toucheth shall be unclean, and that soul that toucheth it shall be unclean until evening.
Okay. All right. So this ordinance here that we just read about here, dealing with the red heifer, is put into place at a interesting time, because when we remember back, the camp was actually full of death, right? We looked at all of the previous chapters where we had all of these grumblings and disobedience and rebellions and things going on, which ended in the death and of many people, and a plague that went forth in the within the camp. So it's fitting now to deal with what do you do then when death is among you, when you come in contact with a dead body. Somebody just dies that's next to you, which there was a plague that literally happened. People was falling out, just dying, right? So we see put in place this statute into law. So we want to deal with that. So going all the way back, it says this is the statute. What you read, the King James? Does that say statute or ordinance?
Ordinance.
Ordinance. That word is hu-ha. Hu-ka. Hu-ka. A statute or ordinance. So, in regards to the pronouncements of the Almighty, there seems to be a few categories that we see in Scripture in regards to the pronouncements of the Most High. An example of that, when we look at Bereshit 26, 4 and 5, where it says, "And I shall increase your seed like the stars of the heavens, and I shall give all these lands to your seed, and in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice and guarded my charge, my commandments, my laws, and my Torot," or that's the plural form of Torah. So here we see this kind of a thing where it seems as if it's like classifications. You have commands, you have laws, you have Torot. So we see an example there of these different classifications of Yahweh's pronouncements. Another example we see is in Ezekiel 36, 26 and 27, where it says, "And I shall give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you, and I shall take the heart of stone out of your flesh, and I will give you a heart of flesh and put my spirit within you, and I shall cause you to walk in my laws and guard my right rulings or judgments." I think it might say probably in the King James there, "and shall do them." Okay. So we see these different pronouncements. We see where it talks about laws, it talks about commandments, it talks about judgments, and statutes. Statutes is what we're dealing with here with the red heifer. But we want to look at some of these other classifications first before we go into this these commands here, or statutes that we have here. Right? So firstly, let's look at the word that's translated as a law, which is Torah. Torah is a feminine noun meaning instruction, direction, law, Torah, or the whole law. This noun comes from the verb yara, which has as one of its major meanings to teach or to instruct. The noun means instruction in a general way from Elohim. So Torah, which a lot of times is translated as law, literally means instruction. But it can mean the whole law. So it's kind of dealing with the law in a general sense of the word. Kind of, we talk about Torah, we talking about a lot of times, all 5 books of Moses. When we talking about the Torah, it's broad. What?
Most of the time when you hear Torah, you think about the first 5 books.
Right. So thinking about what the word means, or if we're going to put attach categories to these things here, Torah is kind of a broad kind of a category of quote unquote law. Commandments. The word mitzvah, feminine noun meaning a command. It can apply to the edicts issued by a human being, most likely a king. You have some examples there. And it can also relate to a general corpus of human precepts or a body of teachings. Proverbs, what's Proverbs 3 verse 1 saying?
It says, "My son, forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments."
Yeah. So commandments there would be that mitzvah or mitzvot, if we say it's plural form of that. So in the Pentateuch, this is its only usage as far as being translated as commandments. It does not refer to human commandments. In the singular, it may distinguish a certain commandment, yet it appears most frequently in the plural to designate the entire corpus of divine law and instruction. So when we see commandments, it's kind of also, just kind of like Torah is also this mitzvah is also this word that has a broad meaning. It has a broad meaning that in its plural state is signifying all of the commandments. So all of the pronouncements of the Almighty.
So is it like mitzvah or mitzvot is which one is there a difference, I guess is what I'm at. Is there a difference between the mitzvot and Torah? Or is the mitzvot under the Torah, or is it just two different words that mean pretty much?
It seems as if the way that they're used, you have two different words that are dealing with as far as mitzvot and Torah, there are two different words that both can be describing either a single law or the entire law. So it's almost as if you have two different words that's giving you basically the same thought, the same idea. Now, the next words is judgments. The scriptures translates it as right rulings. Mishpat, or judgments, is a judgment, a legal decision, a legal case, a claim, rectitude. The word connotes several variations in meanings depending on its context. It is used to describe a legal decision or judgment rendered. So when you think about the judgments, it's really like what you would do. Like, say for instance, when you talk about the in Leviticus, I think it's 18, where it gives you all of the sexual laws in chapter 18, right? So when you look so those would be, those in 18 is giving you basically the commandments that is giving you about just saying what not to do. But a judgment would be what happens now after you've done the thing that you're not supposed to have done, right? It's a judgment, just like you go to the judge and you receive the penalty, right? So the judgments, the mishpat, is dealing with the result of the offense. It gives the example here. These decisions could come through the use of the Urim and the Thummim. So when you think about what they did with the stones that were inside of their little pouch, that the priest would reach in and grab, and whichever one he pulled out would give you the answer to whether yay or nay to whatever they was dealing with. So the result of using the Urim and the Thummim was giving you the judgments. It was giving you the result of what what you were seeking, right? So when you see the judgments, that's dealing with, and I like the way the scriptures interprets it, because it kind of helps you to be able to understand the word mishpat, because it really is right rulings. It's the rulings that are put forth in righteousness. But here we have this word statutes. When we look at Numbers 19 and verse 2, where it says, this is a statute of the law. A statute. So that word is hukah. Hukah, which means appointed, custom, manner, ordinance. And sometimes it's translated ordinance or statute. So this word here again is the feminine word. The masculine form is huk, which carries the same exact meaning, which actually comes from this word hakak, which means to engrave. To engrave. So when you think about engraving, you're kind of embedding a thing into something, like basically like when you think about the Ten Commandments, how they're embedded in stone, they're carved in, they're written in, appointed, decree, to print or to set. So when you think about this, the root of this word that's translated as statute, the root again is dealing with the idea of inscribing a thing or engraving a thing or setting the thing into stone. I think more specifically the idea that this word brings forth is the idea of preciseness, or it's more it is dealing with more explicit things. So when we think about, like, say for instance, the Ten Commandments is kind of general. It's kind of a general kind of a thing. When you look at the Ten Commandments, you can take all of the other scriptures and break them out into 10 categories and put them inside of the 10 commandments. But when you look at these things that are hukah, these things that come from the word that means to inscribe, they're more precise. When you think about an inscription, you think about it in something that you get inscribed, right? It's something that's, sometimes you see a lot of detail in these things, right? And this is the idea, I think, that's coming forth with this actual word, hak. All right, Shabbat Shalom. So this word in the ancient, we look at this word in the ancient, we have this division that is made, the het, that makes a division. It makes a separation. It makes a distinction from inside and out. You see a separation, a distinction, set apartness in this word, in this letter het, and the kuf, which is the gathering of light at the horizon. So you have a coming together, a pulling together and a distinction that's made. So when you think about this word, it's something that brings that can create a distinction. It can create that separation, and it shows you that it's a fence, right? The het is a fence, so it's creating the boundaries, and it's a pulling together, a double pulling together, because you have two of these coughs and double. So you have the double pulling together and the separation that's being made. So when we think about this again, we're looking at Numbers 19. When we look at this again, these huhak are really dealing with the specifics. It's not like a general just law, but it's getting down into specifics. Like again, when we looked at, when I just flipped over real quick to Leviticus chapter 18, those there also are statutes. There's statutes that are given, right? Because those are specifics. We see in the grand thing about adultery and sexual immorality. But now when you look at Leviticus 19, 18 is giving you more specifics, and it's giving you specific examples. So that's what we're dealing with when we look at statutes. Okay, so let us deal with then this particular statute that's dealing with the red heifer. The red heifer. That's what a red heifer looks like. Yeah. Okay, so.
What Esau look like?
Huh?
Is that what Esau look like?
Esau.
Is that ready?
That's ready right there. Earthy.
Is that what David looked like?
He was ready. He was earthy. That's what his name came from. Okay, so verse 2, where it says, "Speak to the children of Israel that they bring you a red heifer, a perfect one, in which there is no blemish." So we're dealing with something that's unblemished, in which is no defect. So here we see this. We see this a lot in the Hebrew, where we don't have the same. Look, you got some new stuff going on. We don't see this idea like we have in English with this thing that vary is an adverb. I think I asked this before, right? Vary, the word vary. That is very good. That's an adverb, right? So we don't really have these. That's an adverb, right?
Well, it could be an adverb or adjective.
Or an adjective.
I think that's an adjective. Very good.
Let's find out.
Okay.
Goodness is a state, so it has to be described.
Okay. I'm not very into this English. We've covered this before.
We have. I think it's an adjective.
But whatever the case may be, it is an adverb. I was right.
Right.
Okay, so don't be coming in here trying to sit up here.
Shot
right.
down.
You can't use it as an adjective.
Okay, so it's both.
Yeah.
All right.
Both. Yeah.
I was saying because goodness is a state of being, so it's a noun as opposed to a verb.
Yeah. Okay, so the point is that here, when it's dealing with the perfectness of the heifer, is giving you these two words. It's saying that it wants it to be unblemished, which I believe there is tamim, unblemished, which is one word, and then this other word, which I think is mum, which also means of no defect. So it's giving you you want to have this perfect animal that is perfect in every way. And it could have just said a perfect one, but again, it's giving you these two words to give to bring forth the point that this thing is going to be at the epitome of perfectness. It's a perfect one, and there is no blemish. Also, this red heifer, they wanted to be one that a yoke has never been placed on it. Right? This is an unworked. An unworked heifer, right? So when you think about the idea of this thing being unworked, it's something then it could never have been used for work. It has a degree of set apartness. It was never used. It was never dedicated to work. So if it never had that particular set apartness, it seems as if it would have only been set apart and consecrated or assigned to be used for these holy purposes, right? So it's almost as if they find these animals that are born and they kind of keep them to use them for these specific purposes, right? Not like these other animals that they would use for so in other words, you couldn't take a red heifer that you used out in the fields that had all these other purposes and then just kind of repurpose it for the for this red heifer thing. Okay, so this I'm clicking over there like this. Okay, so again, so this is this red heifer. So this word red is Adamah. Adamah, which sounds like Adam. It sounds like Edom, like we was just talking about. Right? Which Adamah is soil. Actually, the word was translated as red heifer. When you look at it in the Hebrew, it actually says Adamah, which is the soil, which it's the soil because of its general redness, earthiness, the ground, or the land. So again, we think about this this word. It's not necessarily like that, like the color red that we think about. When you see red clay, the earth,
Brownish, reddish.
it's not like what you think.
Blood red.
Although the idea of blood is present in it. The idea of blood is present, but it's not as if it's giving you that bright red color that we think about. It looks like the heifer that you've seen, where it's a brownish thing that's from the earth, from the soil, from the ground. Red, the word red, we think about the color of blood, and we think about the life is in the blood. Thinking about what types of things, like why, like the what is it that is representing when we see this thing, this red heifer that's being used to cleanse those who have touched the dead. And again, the first thing that I thought about was the idea that red is the color of blood, and the life is in the blood. So we're dealing with this thing that's cleansing from death, and then we're going to add to this. We're going to bring life than to those that have been touched by death. Okay, so the heifer, the sacrificial animal, which was not a bullock. When we look at the sin offering that's brought for a congregation, is a bullock that's brought, which would be a young male bull. But for the red heifer, we have this heifer, this young female cow that's brought, which, you know, I guess is kind of the counterpart of the sin offering. So when we look at that, it says from this commentary here, this one obviously is the female, because it's saying that the female sex is the bearer of life. It brings forth fruit. So again, we have this idea of adding life to a situation of death. We're bringing life to a situation of death.
Well, like it's like counteracting it.
Yeah.
It's like that situation. You got to counteract it with that life,
right?
Maybe to bring balance or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. So, so when we look now, when we look, so they verse 3, where it says, verse 3, and you shall give her the heifer unto Eleazar the priest. Right, so Eleazar dealt with this red heifer. The sacrifice itself was to be superintended by Eleazar the priest, the eldest son of the high priest, and his presumptive successor in office, because Aaron, or the high priest, whose duty it was to present the sin offering for the congregation, could not, according to his official position, which required him to avoid all uncleanness of death. Right, the high priest was not able to become unclean. So when we see what happened with Eleazar would become unclean by performing this thing, right?
So that kind of that reminds me of whenever I was talking about being unclean isn't a sin in and of itself. Like being unclean or becoming made unclean isn't a sin. It's a sin if you bring that uncleanness into like the holy temple. If you bring the uncleanness to the holy temple, then that's where it becomes a sin. Because obviously the heifer had to be dealt with, and the people that dealt with it became made tameh.
Mm-hmm.
So just because you become made tameh, that's not a sin. It would be a sin if the high priest, like Aaron, because he's not supposed to be made unclean for anything, if unless except for sexual relations, he'd be made unclean. But it seems like the only thing he'd be able to be, that's the only thing he'd be able to be made unclean for. So if the high priest makes himself unclean, that would be a sin. So that's why it goes to one of the under priests.
Well, specifically Eleazar, which was the next one in line.
So does that mean that it's always going to be the next in line?
Well, it seems as if that seems to be the protocol. It seems that is the protocol. Whoever would be the second man in command, as far as priests go, would be the one who would take up who would oversee the proceedings of the red heifer. but not, of course, the high priest for those purposes. So, that's just something to remember in terms of, the one who's proceeding over this these doings here, Eleazar. Okay, so also we see verse 6, and the priest shall take cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet, and cast it into the midst of the burning heifer. So you have these. First of all, when you think about the burnt offerings, where they sent the burnt offerings, where the burnt offering was this thing that was offering for sin, the sin offering. It's never called a sweet savor. The sin offering. You wasn't adding anything to the sin offering. You wasn't doing anything with it. You were just burning it. But here with this one, which it's not called a sin offering, but is called an offering that's made for sin. And we see here this addition of this cedar wood, this scarlet, and this hyssop. So when we look at those ingredients, these three substances were used as the common materials in rites of purification. The cedar or juniper, the resin or turpentine of which was a preservative against decay. So this cedar wood was acted as a preservative against decay. I don't know what would be the epitome of decay more so than the beginning of decay, which would be death. But we see here with this cedar again, actually is this thing that's counteracting the decay. And it was employed in medicines for elephantiasis and other skin diseases. The scarlet, a tongue or band, was the color expressing health and vitality. And the hyssop, probably the caper plant, whose cleansing virtues as a medicine and use in the treatment of ulcers and diseases of the skin allied to leprosy were known to the ancients. So you had these, not just some random ingredients that are put into this fire that were added to the sacrifices, but all three of these things are giving you they have these kind of medicinal purposes that's bringing forth the idea again of life and health and vitality, bringing this counterbalance to the result of being touched by or being around death.
So the whole thought process of the scarlet, I would say, is kind of interesting to me because that doesn't really have any. That's like more like symbolism as opposed.
It's symbolic. Yes, it doesn't have, because it's just only made scarlet because of the dyes that are added to it. So you have two things that would have actual medicinal properties, and the other thing that's really just kind of exemplary. It just exemplifies a thought, an idea of health and vitality and life. Again, with the red heifer being that thing that is, giving you that idea of life and, that which constitutes life or the blood. So when we look at this, when we look at everyone involved in the process becomes unclean. Everyone that's involved in the process of making this stuff that makes you clean, everyone involved in it becomes unclean. Verse 7, the priest shall then wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and afterward come into the camp, but the priest shall be unclean until even. The one who burns it shall also wash his clothes in water and bathe his body in water, and shall be unclean until even. Now another man who is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and deposit them outside the camp in a clean place, and the congregation of the sons of Israel shall keep it as water to remove impurity and its purification from sin. And the one who gathers the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. So you have these three individuals who are involved in the making of this purification water, the red heifer water, and all of them who are involved in the making of it become unclean. The priest, the one who burns it, and the one who gathers the ashes.
I was going to say that in that verse where it says, verse 9, it don't read the same way up there. The water to remove impurity. It talks in, I guess this is the King James, it says, it shall be kept for a congregation of the children of Israel for a water of separation. It is a purification for sin. The water of separation is Nida, the Nida water. So it's, that word, which would be the woman in her menstrual impurity, Nida, a separation word.
What?
Separation.
I heard you. That was like a what?
Remove as water to remove impurity. I guess the impurity there would be Nida. So water, the Nida water.
Hold on, I want to look at that.
Verse 9.
Oh wait, I'm looking at Numbers 19, verse 9. The water of separation. Interesting. Because it's the water that is actually causing you to be able to be cleansed.
It also speaks about it in verse 13, 20, and 21.
Yeah, the water that gets made is called.
But the thing that you are is actually
you are Nida. Mm-hmm.
A man can be Nida.
Mm-hmm. Well, a man will become Nida if he has sex with a mistress woman anyway.
But this is talking about. Do it call it that?
A man will become Nida. Yeah.
It calls
it don't.
Or does it call it unclean?
It just says unclean. But all the Nida rules apply to him.
But does it call him that?
They don't call him that.
But here, you can actually this. Here is
My
actually.
Nida study.
I know you're a Nida expert. So here, when you get this water of separation on you, it's because of the fact that you
are separate.
You're separated, but it's like it's Nida.
Right.
Because separation. So when I was
all right, so hold on. So let's just get medical. Let's get like when a woman's on her menstrual cycle. So I want to just get technical for a minute right here. What is actually
technical?
Yeah. What's actually is death coming out of you?
That's what I was thinking.
Is death coming out of you whenever that happens?
Well, it's not.
You could say life's coming. If blood's coming out of you, life's coming out of you. So I don't see why you can't.
That was a cleaning process.
It is.
Because it's supposed to be a baby, if not.
Yeah.
So it's
like the
death.
stuff. It's the stuff that would support the life if there was life.
But it's coming out. So
but it's
death.
coming out. So it's shedding out so that you could.
Can I say that death is coming out of you?
I mean, you can say death is coming out or life is
That's
coming
what I'm
out.
thinking.
I mean, you can either say life is coming out or death is coming out. I mean, I would say life is coming out.
If life is coming out, but the life is not alive anymore, so we can. I think we can say it's death.
The potential for life.
But the potential has passed.
The life is about as a child.
I think it's safe
the
to say that
potential is
death is
passed.
coming out of you. I think it's safe to say that.
That's especially now that it's using the same
Like,
for the man or the congregation for this.
Or for anyone, right? If this thing is called the water of separation,
It's pertaining to death.
and it's pertaining to the Mayim Nida. What that look like? Let me see what it is. I want to.
Dang.
Nida. La mi nida. La mishmarut. La mi nida. Chatet. That's interesting. Okay, so I never thought about this before. This is some new things that's going on here. Okay, so everybody involved in this thing becomes unclean. The priest, the one who burns it, and the one who gathers this stuff that's making.
We'll forget somebody. I have to reread it. In verse 3, the priest doesn't kill it; somebody else kills it, and the priest just takes the blood. So it's a forfeit.
Right, the priest is just kind of overseeing all of this. He's watching it, but somebody does it say who that person is though? It don't mention him.
Slay her before his face, the priest, Eleazar. Then it says Eleazar, verse 4, the priest shall take of her blood with his
That's
finger.
all the priest is doing, is taking the blood,
Yeah, he's just taking the blood
of
yeah.
it.
In my version, it says, and ye shall give her. And, oh, yeah, it does say one, too. Yeah, it says one shall.
Do we know what happens to that person?
You have to be unclean.
No, but it don't talk about him, dude.
No.
He's mysterious. Ye shall give her unto Eleazar the priest, and he may bring her forth without the camp, and one shall slay her before his face. Eleazar shall. Okay. So we don't know about that person then. We don't know if that person becomes
Well,
unclean.
he has to.
It's, well,
Everybody he's
it
involved
seems
with.
as if
Everybody became unclean.
it seems as if that would be the case, but it just doesn't talk about the one who's doing the actual slaughtering. Okay, so when we see all of this, right? When we see all of this, in what ways can we see Messiah in this? In what ways can we see Messiah in this whole thing with the red heifer?
Well, I was curious to know why it was a heifer, a female.
I don't know if you was here whenever when we got to that point, but again, we look at the general sin offering that's given for the whole congregation. So you're making this thing that's it can be used for it's mostly used for individuals, but it's being used for the whole congregation as this thing that purifies sin. So the thing that you would usually use for the sin of the whole congregation would be a bullock or a young male bull. But here with the red heifer, here with this thing that's used to cleanse those that have been in close proximity to death or touch death in some way, is using the young female heifer. So we looked at some of the things where we see all of these kind of pictures of life. So you see that first of all, it's the red heifer that is red, which blood is red and blood is life and life is in the blood. The female version of the cow, the life actually comes through the woman. So, or the female, I don't know if animals are female too, but the female species, life comes through them. So and then you have the herbs that are added, which are that have these medicinal effects. So you have all of these things that are giving you these ideas of life. So the female heifer would be another one of those pictures that's giving you this idea of life being restored to a dead situation. And again, it don't say none of that. But when you're looking at it, these are things that you could see from the pictures that are being made there for us. What do you have to say about that?
Now, and did they say that it was you said it was an offering for sin whenever it was?
Yeah, it says it in verse 9. It says, and a man that is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and lay them up upon the camp in a clean place, and it shall be kept in the congregation of the children of Israel as a water water of separation. It is a purification for sin. So this thing that is done for sin. There's another one that says it. That was verse 9. There's two verses. Where's the other one? I can't find it. Oh, verse 17. And for an unclean person, they shall take the ashes of the burnt heifer of purification for sin. The ashes of the burnt heifer of purification for sin. So this thing that you're doing is for the purification of sin. So there is again, it's not literally called a sin offering, but the thing that's being done is for sin. It's cleansing of the effects of the uncleanness that's associated with death. So again,
Where's the priest? Where's like the commandment for that?
what?
Where's the commandment for that?
Which?
Regard is that we went over in Leviticus talking about that? Coming in contact.
Hold on. What you asking?
I'm asking where the law is for death.
As far as like being around death, it talks about as far as a priest not supposed to be doing it. It talks about as far as the
this is the result of coming in contact with death.
This is what you do whenever it happens. So this is what you do whenever it happens around you. So we see like in Numbers chapter 6, where it talks about the fact that the person who takes the Nazarite vows not to allowed to be around dead bodies. In Numbers chapter 6,
verse 6, right? Only days in separation unto Yahweh he shall come at no dead body.
Yeah. And then we also see in Leviticus, let's see, Leviticus 20. Hold on. 19. Wait a second. 21. Leviticus 21, where it talks about the priest is not supposed to be around the dead bodies. Defilement of the priest.
Verse 11. Neither he go in to any dead body, nor defile himself for his father or for his mother. And this okay. So it's kind of like,
I think when we it talks about in when we think about the numbering of Israel and how the Levites were omitted from the numbering of Israel, because Israel was the numbering of Israel was those men that was going out to war.
right.
So the Levites weren't included in that because they wasn't going out to war, because if you go out to war, you're going to be touching a dead body because you're going to be making dead bodies. People are going to be being dead next to you. So I think those are the places where that I could just think of offhand where.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty much, because I was thinking that, like certain parts, like it combines it all, like the sexual stuff.
Yeah.
Combined with the feast. I wanted trying to remember if there was like a chapter that like this that just went over death on the opposite. But there's only not necessary, because once you go to war, deal with dead bodies and somebody incidentally died, and you're in, so it doesn't.
Or if there was just a number of plagues just happened in the camp. Like again, this is the context upon which these commands, this statute is being given in the first place. They just had all those 250 people swallowed up. They had those other people that died because of their rebellion after they done seen these other people get swallowed up.
Right.
All this death going on in the camp. Now you got to know what it is that's supposed to be done after the fact. So again, when we look at this, in what ways are we able to see Messiah in this?
He was offered up as symbolically the lamb without blemish, just like this heifer has to be without blemish.
Yes. So when we look at sin offerings, yes, one of the criteria for these things that are offered as sin offerings, they have to be without spot and without blemish. So yes, that's obviously one thing that we could look at, because again, this red heifer is to be without spot and without blemish. That's it. Okay, what else did you say?
Oh, for the whole congregation.
Okay, yeah.
Because you got certain offerings that are just for people and whatnot, but he was sacrificed also for the whole.
Okay, so you saying the fact that Yeshua was an offering that was a collective sacrifice that was made, not just like an individual,
right?
Which is the same thing that we can see with the red heifer. Anything else?
I'll let somebody else go.
was he a sacrifice for the whole world?
Yeah.
That's your answer?
No, that's the question. That's the question.
My answer, yeah.
Yeah, my answer is the same. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's your answer?
Well, the red heifer, was he a sacrifice for the whole world? Sheep.
The red heifer, verse 10, and he that gathers the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes and be unclean until even, and it shall be unto the children of Israel and unto the stranger that sojourns among them for a statute forever. So it's for Israel and whoever is attached to Israel. Okay, so far the only things that we can see that help us to be able to see Messiah is the fact that we're dealing with a sacrifice that was without blemish, and that was a congregational or a collective sacrifice that was made for many. Okay, what about verse 3? The priest that was that oversees the situation. It wasn't the high priest, it was the son of the high priest. The father, the high priest, could not be made unclean at any time. But the son was the one who came and went through the process for the cleansing of the nation. So we're able to see Messiah, I would say, in the fact that Eleazar, the son of the high priest, so that the father, who was the high priest, was able to remain in his holiness was able to come and become unclean for the sake of the people. Right? The thing that Yeshua had to come and do for us had to be done by Yeshua.
Yeah, so Yeshua is actually the sacrifice and the priest.
Right. Right. So we can see Yeshua as being a picture of the red heifer, the sacrifice, and also the priest. And again, the connection, the priest being the son of the high priest who is able to become unclean for the purposes of cleansing the nation. Right? When we look at Yeshua, Yeshua literally became a curse to redeem Israel back to the Father. Right? Yeshua literally became a curse to cleanse Israel from sin. Or you could just say death, being touched by death. The wages of sin is death. Right? So we could definitely see that connection there. When we look at the fact that Yeshua, the Son, who came and the Most High, who's on high, is the epitome of holiness, right? He's the epitome of cleanness, right? He can't be made unclean.
I was thinking about
there can't be any uncleanness around in him.
Because the uncleanness would get immediately canceled out.
That's what I say. Because if Yahweh is light, he is light. In him is no darkness. In him, he's light. So for the Most High to come into close proximity with something that isn't light is just going to overtake. It's just going to do away with it. Right? Yahweh connected, Yahweh, in order for Yahweh to come in contact with us as these wicked beings that we are, we have to actually be made like he is. I don't think there's anything else. We have to actually be made like he is. Otherwise, it seems as if we're canceled out. We're eliminated, I would say.
If you was darkness, then you'd be light.
Well, if you are darkness, then darkness
is going to be eliminated.
Yeah, it goes away. It's overtaken unless you become light. Is the only way that you could be in the presence of light. Otherwise, if you're darkness, you're no more. So when we think about the fact that Yahweh, that the Most High can't be in contact with us in this state, the whole reason why we have any of this in the first place, when we look back to Adam and Hava, that separation that was made between the creation and the creator, at the end of the day, we want to be able to make it back to the Father. And the only way that is possible is for us to be made to be as he is. When Yeshua returns, it says that however he is, that's how we shall be. We'll be transformed into his likeness so that we are able to be received by the Father. But in the meanwhile, we have this thing that had to happen, the way in which we are redeemed, which is uh, the Creator in the flesh coming in a form, in a way that we were able to receive and touch and experience. But in the process, he became unclean.
I was just thinking about the fact that the ashes was something that would be used over and over again. Like the thing was, I don't know how many years.
One batch.
One
what
batch
you got from one batch.
Or you could just keep pouring more water in it and diluting it. I don't really know how they did it, but the thing was killed one time, and then for however many uses later, it was still able to be applied.
Yeah.
So, and with Yeshua, it's like it's applicable past the the one use, quote unquote.
Yeah. I mean? It's not like a one-time thing.
Most offerings would be just a one-time offering, and then you'd have to talk about Hebrews, going back into Hebrews, you'd have to offer it again and again.
Right. So that would be another way. Then I guess you could look at and see Messiah in it, is the fact that this thing that's being made, not only is it this thing that's made for the whole people, but it's something that's made to be able to be used perpetually until the water ran out.
Then you have to do it again.
Well, then you have to do it again, but the idea, like it's well, thinking about what you're doing is making this water that you would use to sprinkle on those that were touched by, like you're not using the whole thing all at once. You're making a concoction, and then you're going to go back and use that every time that you need it. You're not going to go through the whole process every time somebody dies. You're going to make a big batch and use it. You're going to make a big batch and use it till it's gone, and then make another batch. But the point is that this thing that you've made can be used and reused over again. Just like when we think about what has been done with Messiah, the sacrifice that he has made, we're able to always go back to that singular sacrifice that was made, just like they're able to go back to the single sacrifice that was made.
I'm wondering
how long it lasted. I don't know. Don't talk about that. Don't say that.
How they preserved it. I mean, I guess they have a special process. Standing water is good. I mean, considering they had these vessels made of gold and stuff, so probably some purification. See, me, I'm in the Western world. I think about mosquitoes getting them standing water. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that
we talking about some holy water, you know what I'm saying? So it might be they probably repel all that.
They probably covered it up.
Yeah, covered it up.
And they probably had a covering for it.
I'm trying, put myself in there, They had different vessels though, so like silver sterilized stuff, and gold probably do the same. So,
Yeah. Okay, so anything else? Any other things that we could look at this and see Messiah in this?
Am
I calling you?
Yeah, on my regular phone.
Was you gonna say something?
But then I got distracted. So I'm trying to remember what.
All right, so
But okay, so this was used. The water was used for the purification from being around a dead body,
yeah,
and then the house, like wherever it took place, right?
yeah. If it was in a house,
You would sprinkle around in the house with the
Mhm.
water.
if there was open vessels, verse 15, every open vessel which had not covered, which had no covering bound upon it, is unclean. So you would
then
you
my
would get, so
question
you would
is
get rid of those things.
when there is death or when someone dies, are there like spores or something that like
I don't know that.
go out from the dead or something like
I don't
that?
know that.
Like because you're basically, you know, taking these little like kind of this essential oil
I mean,
type thing. and
I
you're
think that that's something that could be the case.
like,
Like now, when we saying that, we would be trying to think of why it is that the Most High is giving these commands in the first place. Which that could be the case, but whatever the case may be, whether it be actual uncleanness or not, there's something that needs to happen. First of all, there's something that happens to cause there to be uncleanness, whether it be some type of spores or something like you saying that emit.
I mean, is it just the concept of life to death, or is it like the physicalness of life to death that causes the uncleanness? Like, you know what I mean? Because you could say, well, just like we had that little the scarlet strand, that was like it
was just conceptual.
It was just conceptual because a red strand.
But there's also the physical components, which would be the other two
So
things.
then it has
First of all, they're calling this thing the water of Nidah, which you're talking about an actual thing that's coming out. So it gives you the examples of you. So if somebody just dies, that's one thing. But there could be like a bloody death where there's blood that is involved.
They talked about on the battlefield.
But it also talks about the grave, though. If somebody's buried underground, there ain't nothing that's touching you. Right?
Yeah, when I think about death, is just the decomposing process.
Yeah, but the grave is involved though. So if you go to a grave, you're not the stuff is decomposing under the earth.
So
that's where it belongs.
Even just the grave itself. If you touch a gravestone.
Yeah.
So because they didn't use casket.
Verse 18, right? Verse 18. A clean person shall take hyssop and dip it in the water and sprinkle it upon the tent and upon all the vessels and upon the persons that were there and upon him that touched a bone or one slain or one dead or a grave.
But they're talking about this and they have something with them that is a dead body, literally. They have the bones of Joseph with them. So they're walking around the wilderness for 40 years with the bones of Joseph with them because he wanted to be buried in the land of Israel.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they had to clean the whole time.
Well, he's probably encased in something.
Encased.
That's just like the grave.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they didn't touch him every day.
Only when they moved.
Yeah, they set him somewhere. He was there.
He was in his own area.
Yeah.
So they were gonna be unclean because we got moved.
The guys who touched the grave, I guess it's a grave. Whoever was in charge of carrying that, I guess it was unclean. But you have provision.
Oh, we're back. So is there? What verse is that? 19? No, 18.
18 mentions the grave.
What? That's what I'm saying. A chicken bone?
Well, it's talking about people. Though.
But it made me think though. So, dang, because bones.
So if you came across some dead, decayed body,
But I'm saying it decayed all the way to
the
flesh.
bone.
It's just bones sitting there.
Let's say I'm in the
yeah,
kitchen.
we ain't talking about
In
chicken.
the kitchen.
I'm about to cook something. I'm going through the meat, you know what I'm saying, the process. Wow, there's some bloody meat.
Nah, we talking about bodies though, like humans.
But blood from animals don't make you unclean.
No.
No,
You just have to get rid of most of it.
you gotta get it out.
Drain it
You
out.
can't eat it.
And cook
You're
it.
not supposed to eat the blood, but the
Like
blood,
sitting around eating blood.
but the blood don't.
What I look like.
The eating the blood makes you unclean, but touching the blood, they don't talk about that.
But this is also used. Isn't this water used for the? Is this water used for? It's used for a leper whenever they do this. The way.
No, they use water, and they use cedar wood, hyssop, and the other and scarlet in the process for cleansing the leper.
But they don't use.
But it's not this water.
Yeah, that cedar and stuff go in the water.
In what water?
It goes in the ashes.
It goes in. It goes in the fire,
With the
so it's incorporated in the ashes. The leper.
Where's the leper?
I don't think it uses this water. I think it uses some of the same
It
ingredients.
uses the water. It uses all the ingredients other than the red heifer ashes.
Yeah.
What about the Nazarite?
The Nazarite got to start over.
Does he don't get sprinkled with any of this water?
No. Well, if he touches a dead body, he has to. So that would just fall under this.
Because if he touches the body,
He can't be a Nazarite anymore, but it would just fall into him just being unclean and needing to, get this water sprinkled on him, right? Okay, so.
yeah, you're correct that it's not the red, yeah, because it says
It's just fresh water, right?
it says
And the blood of a dead bird, a live bird, cedar, hyssop, and scarlet.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then it says here, I'll just read it for anybody who's over here. This shall be the law of the leper in the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought unto the priest, and the priest shall go forth out of the camp, and the priest shall look, and behold, if the plague of leprosy be healed in the leper, then shall the priest command to take for him that is to be cleansed 2 birds alive and clean, and cedar wood and scarlet and hyssop. And the priest shall command that one of the birds be killed in an earthen vessel over running water. As for the living bird, he shall take it and the cedar wood and the scarlet and the hyssop, and shall dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water. And he shall sprinkle upon him that is to be cleansed from leprosy 7 times, and shall pronounce him clean.
Yeah.
And shall let the living bird loose in an open field. So, yeah. But you can see why I was thinking back to the
Yeah,
red heifer,
there's a
ingredients
lot of similarities.
plus water.
Yeah, and plus water, which again, now we could think about water again if Yahshua talks about the living water. Here, when we look back at Numbers 19, you're talking about this water that's bringing life back to the dead situation, right? Which is the same thing that we see with this water of separation. Okay, so lastly, we want to talk about what does this mean for us today? What does this mean for us today when we think about this whole idea of the red heifer water? And when it talks about, when we look at these things here in Numbers 19, again, this is something it says shall be a perpetual statute, and one that does not receive the sprinkling, the cleansing of this red heifer water, this water of separation, um, his uncleanness is upon him, right? So,
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go back, but did you guys talk about how, I guess it's in Isaiah where he talks about the sprinkling for the healing of the nations?
no, we
Did you
didn't
speak
talk about that.
and the
No.
whole concept of sprinkling as opposed to washing and all the rest of that stuff?
Yeah, the sprinkling that it talks about there is a word that has a connection with atonement. It has that cleansing connotation that's connected to it. We also see that same thing in Ezekiel 36. That happens. The first thing that says it happens in Ezekiel 36, where it says 36:25, then I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean from your filthiness, and from all your idols I will cleanse you. So the idea is there of sprinkling. We see that when we think about what it is that Yeshua does for us, we see that idea there. But I'm saying when we look at this and this idea of dead bodies and uncleanness, I'm saying, what does this mean for us today? I'm saying, I don't know. I was thinking about this just even recently. I don't know where the practice of going and being in this place with this dead body for extended periods of time, where this came from. Like, where did that come from? When your people die, that you go and you put them on display, and you sit there and you allow for all of your friends and family to come and look at this dead body for a day, sometimes 2 days. You look at it for 1 day, and then the next day you have in the church you have this meeting, with your dead loved one there on display. I'm saying, where did this thing come from, and why do we do it?
It has to be something pagan, and then it was probably monetized, turned into a business to where, like, it's almost like going to see a show. You know what I mean? And the people, the establishment is charging to have the body displayed. They're charging for, the burial arrangements, caskets, and all of that stuff. So, you know what I mean? It's probably, or the origins are probably, pagan, heathen, and Gentile, yeah. And then basically it was monetized.
I mean, because I don't think they was. Do you think that like in the back before embalming and stuff like that, they wouldn't have the body just sitting out? I don't know. Maybe they would.
Do you know why they started?
I don't know.
Why they started
Because it would be decay. Well, because what they thought people was waking up. Or
no,
whatever.
they didn't think it. They
were
actually coming back to life.
But you know what I mean? Like the whole thought of you gotta embalm someone to have them on display, or it's gonna stink. Like unless you put the herbs in there, like and different things. I guess there's ways of getting around it, but But there are people who won't like see it gets taken to like another level amongst some Hebrews where it's like they won't go around a dead body at all. Like, and
Yeah, if you go around the dead body, as long as you don't touch it, you ain't unclean, right?
Nah, because the house that the dead body is in is unclean. So if you go in the place where the dead body is, then
you're unclean.
Then you're unclean.
But at the same time, you're not going to the temple with that uncleanness on you, and you're not you're not going to the temple with that uncleanness on you.
No.
And
well, we are the temple now, right?
Well, we're the temple, so the temple can't become made unclean anyway. You know, and not only that, but we're not the high priest, so we can't be around a dead body.
Well, my question is that yes, we do have the ability to be. It's not a sin for you to be made unclean by a dead body. However, there is nothing that is able to cause you to be made clean again under when we look at Numbers 19. There's nothing that nowhere that says that you can't come in contact with a dead body. This is talking about what happens when you do that. But I'm saying for us today, then what? What do you do then once you become unclean? There's according to this, there's nothing that can be done, and that uncleanness is upon you. That uncleanness is upon you.
That's just part of being an exile.
So you say that I'm not going to this place because I don't want to be defiled, but somebody goes, they never got this red heifer water on them. They go and they come back and they're unclean, and then they make you unclean.
Or you just run into somebody in the street who just came.
Hey, what's up, my man? I ain't seen you in a while. Where you coming from? Oh, this funeral. Yeah, man.
So basically, what you're saying is that if you ever been to a funeral, you were unclean and still are unclean today.
What I'm saying is that according to Numbers 19, there's no way for you to have been made clean again.
Or if somebody died in this house, I don't know. The house is 100 years old. There's only one family that lived in this house before us, but somebody could have died in the house that we don't really know about. Somebody died and the house never got sprinkled.
In comes Yeshua and
Thank the Most High for your shit.
Yeah.
I know, for real.
Okay, so all right, so saying that then, right?
Isn't that like whenever the priest came and they saw the guy on the road that was like beat up? He might not have wanted to go over there to check on the guy because the guy could have died while he was,
you talking about
checking on him.
The Good Samaritan?
Yeah. And then the Good Samaritan sees the guy, he's on the side of the road, half dead. He goes over and he helps him.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that when we look at this, I think that there's principles to be gained. There's principles to be gained from all of this. But at the end of the day, this, just like every other thing, pictures for us Yeshua. It gives us a picture of Yeshua, where Yeshua was, yes, not only our atoning sacrifice, but again, also we can see where Yeshua also is typified with the red heifer. When you think about the fact that, again, all of this was for the the preservation of the holiness of the temple, of the tabernacle. He didn't want the tabernacle to become defiled. So, you know, you couldn't have people walking around in perpetual uncleanness. But what do you say as what Paul talks about as being the temple of Elohim? We are the temple of Elohim. So I think on one hand, we have to keep in mind the thought process of clean and unclean and separation and making distinctions, right? On one hand, but on the other hand, do we say that the Father now leaves us in those, when we're in those states of uncleanness? I don't know that. I can't say that, you know, a woman on her cycle, the spirit leaves her, right?
I would kind
That doesn't make any sense.
I would kind of say that the example that I go to in the Torah is that a woman can be a Nazarite. And, you know, if the Nazarite vow lasts 30 days at a minimum, then she would have to be Nidah at some point during her Nazarite vow. Or it would say she can only be Nazarite if she's not in Nidah. That's kind of my thing.
I can't remember when we was talking about this, what my determination was.
What your ruling was?
What the mishpat was. But I think as far as here, I'm saying the point of all of this I'm saying is that I think that we have to be mindful of the distinctions, mindful of the separations, mindful of this idea of death and the uncleanness that's associated with it. But it not being something that is going to actually remove you from the presence. It's not going to remove you from the presence of the Almighty. When we look at what Yeshua has come to do, Yeshua has come to actually bring us closer to the Father. When all of these things are giving you reasons, you know, why we have a separation. So we're not going to, we won't say that, you know, looking at this, I think that what to gain from this chapter is, again, realizing that we do have to make distinctions and certain separations. But at the end of the day, Yeshua and what he has done provides the cleansing that we need, right? You know, we're in a state of perpetual uncleanness. There's uncleanness all around us, right? And the only thing that we have to lean to is the fact that Yeshua typifies all of these things, whether it be sin or whether it be uncleanness. You know, Yeshua is the one that, regardless of what the situation is, Yeshua is the one that bridges the gap and brings us back to and allows us to be in right standing with the Father on every level. Okay, so that being said,
basically you telling me, or as you like to say, you say all this to say,
yeah,
I can't fill that application out of the morgue. You know what I'm saying? Basically, can't be down at the morgue. Yeah. I'm just messing with you.
I mean, truthfully, I would say yeah. I would say yeah to that. I would say yeah. Let somebody else do that.
Yeah.
Let somebody else be in charge of that.
Well, what happens?
Because to me, I feel like the practice in general. Again, I don't know why we do this. I don't know why we do this thing that we do. You know, with these dead bodies, parading these people around, and you know, being in this close proximity with these dead bodies. You know, making them up and you know.
Well, see, I did a quick little research and I was going through. They had different cultures. Some of it was paganism, looked at stuff with the Egyptian, and from what I gathered from just scanning over it was people seeing the body over to the other side. So,
like waiting with it.
Yeah, it was like a transitional thing because they said like even like the Neanderthals, they pulled up stuff and they had them buried with different types of animals.
The Neanderthals, so that's like the Eurasian people.
Yeah, Eurasian. They talked about the Egyptians, how when they mummified, they sent them off with different goods, and they were associated with them transitioning to something else, and then being there to send them off or whatever.
Yeah.
Like get them good tidings, like to the next world.
Right.
Going to, so.
I mean, I think that for me, like I had a bad experience. My mom had a bad experience, I should say, with the whole thought process behind keeping numbers 19 to the letter.
Yeah.
Because my mom, when her mother died, when her mother died. Okay. Hisky, come get Moshe.
Hisky's right there.
When take him outside. When her mother died, she didn't want to become unclean by going into the funeral home.
Yeah. But,
and then so she was like trying to make the arrangements without going into the funeral home.
Mm-hmm.
And that presented some problems. And then she was also, another problem she had was the whole, everybody in my grandmother's church was expecting a funeral to take place. Everybody in the family was expecting a funeral.
Right. So what I'm saying is that is it the culture that we are in that's causing us to have these feelings about this thing?
Yeah. Well, no. So what happened was that
I feel like it's the culture.
She didn't have the funeral or anything like that. She was going to have a memorial service, but the family got so upset with her for not having a funeral for my nana that everybody kind of just even shut that off. So she never even had a memorial service, and people actually cut my mom off and never talked to her again over not having a funeral for her mother. But what I'm saying is that my mom isn't a priest. She's not even close to being a priest. She's a woman. And at a common denominator.
Right, but
she could never be a priest. So she could have taken care of her mother and her mother's arrangements without that weight, I should say, that burden of legalism, that if you are around a dead body, you're going to be made unclean. And if you have a funeral service,
you still going to be made unclean. My point is that I think it's a combination of things. Yes, she's not a priest, obviously, but I'm saying that this whole thing that we do when we put these things together and the pageantry almost that we go through with these funerals and all of this, I'm saying I don't know that we should be doing all of this stuff in the first place. And then so one of the things that you're talking about again is you have all of these pressures because of these things that we're embedded in, these customs that we do, where now you got people guilting you about these things that you did or you didn't do. But I'm saying, why do we even have these?
She's not guilted by the people. At the time she did it without that. She missed out on closure behind her mother's death. I think that, you know.
But you okay? So I understand. I understand what you. I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying closure. Why is that the closure that we look for? Is having this thing, looking at your loved one in this box.
Yeah, I think the closure would be.
I'm saying that
before she died.
I'm saying the closure that we expect is something. I'm saying that it seems as if it's something that's put on us in the first place. Like, I expect when I do XYZ, then it's going to result in closure. And I'm saying the reason this XYZ that we go through is something that I'm not sure, that I don't know why we do this thing. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, like, did our ancestors do it?
No, it's other nations.
They got them in the ground by sunset.
Yeah, by sunset they have to be buried.
He was buried by sunset.
Dead body with the sun set on it. So
I mean, whenever I die, I don't like to think about this too much. But whenever well, I don't like to think about decomposition. That's the main thing I don't like to think about. But I just want to be put in a burlap sack and then just put in the ground. Like, I don't want any caskets or anything like that. I just want to be put in a sack, put in the ground. It might be nice if they would put wildflowers across the yeah, I'd like maybe some wildflowers.
When we get our land, I'm going to make a special place on the backside of the land where you'll be buried.
I think the process is all messed up now.
Oh my goodness!
I think the process is all messed up now because of the money that's involved with all of the different things based around death.
Yeah. So which one came first?
What?
So I'm saying, which one come first? Did they take this thing and say, "Oh, we can monetize this," or it actually became this big thing because?
Well, I think it started from, some type of pagan practices of burial. Because you figure when they was in the woods, painting their faces and all of that, they had a way they probably buried their ancestors. You know what I mean? They maybe danced around them, you know what I'm saying?
They probably cremated them too, put them through the fire.
Who knows what their practices were, but I would assume that some of it was fire too, because they do it today. So I think that a lot of the things we do started with pagan rituals, and then they found a way to monetize these rituals, and now we adhere to these pagan monetized practices, and we're like, robots.
We function within what we've been
programmed.
Yes.
But this is the thing, okay? So when we went to go to the last wake or whatever that we went to a couple months ago, and you went there and you talked to the family and you talked to the all the people there and brought words of comfort and stuff like that. Was that wrong to do as far as going into the?
I felt like it was half wrong to do. I didn't want to go into the room
because the body was there.
But the one person that was in there wasn't coming out, and I didn't want to be there and not, greet the person like, but it just the whole thing to me now just seems just like we just shouldn't be doing all of that.
Everything we pretty much do is just a bunch of nonsense. I mean, just the whole shaking hand things with just random people. You know what I mean? Just who knows what anybody is doing all through the day. You seen a buddy you ain't seen in a long time. He just got finished scratching his butt. You know what I mean? Like you never know what is going on in the world, and then you just do all of these different things based on the customs of the area you're in.
Yeah.
Oh, in this area, we kiss each other on the cheek. You know, in this area, we shake hands. In this area, we high five.
But you gotta work within cultural norms, or you're gonna be weird.
Well,
like if somebody
I'm
comes
all right.
up to you and
I'm all right with
they
being
want to
weird,
give you a
actually.
handshake and you're just like this,
My dad
they're gonna
does
be
that
like,
all the time.
he does that to people.
Or like the Chinese bow to each other, right? We ain't supposed to be bowing to nobody.
Yeah, I think that to a degree, I think there are things inside of other cultures that are neutral. But again, looking at Numbers 19, not looking at it from a kind of a legalistic perspective, but just looking at it from a perspective that there's something to be gained about how we should actually be dealing with death, and it's not the way that we in our culture today deal with it. We actually should be actually doing something a little bit different than what we do.
But doesn't that call for us to have our own place, our own customs?
Well, not necessarily. You're able to function inside of this place that we're living in, to a degree. Say for instance, if
Are there laws against you like burying your relatives in the backyard?
Well, it depends on where you live at. Like you can't do it in the city for sure. But if you had your own, when I was just out in the country, this spot in these people's yard looked exactly like a gravesite. I don't know if it was that, but it was set up just like one. I don't know what it was, but it looked like that's what it looked like.
You say tombstone or something?
Yeah, just like you was out of what you call it, tombstone and flowers and everything, just right there.
That's what they do though. I know that. Yeah, I be seeing them. Especially they got that land for generations. They bury their family right there.
And then so when I go to my mom's side of the family's family reunion, there's a town that the family was from, and in that town is a graveyard that the whole family is there, and it's a town, it's a regular town just like this, but at the edge of it is a graveyard that all of the whole family people is just right there.
Well, I know in the city.
In the city, no, you can't.
Yeah, they don't want you doing that stuff because they wanna mine your body parts. They want to cut you open, stuff you with some cardboard and some paper, and take all your organs. What? Are you kidding me? Organ selling is like $1 trillion business.
Oh yeah.
They are cutting our people open.
I just want them to put me in a bag and put me under the ground.
They don't want people just putting dead bodies in their backyard.
Why not?
People don't know how to do it. It would smell like craziness.
I got a question.
Would it?
No, it wouldn't smell if you buried them under the ground.
You know how people that probably put.
I mean, you ain't going to be throwing like 100 bodies in the ground at one time. It's going to be one body.
Well, on SVU, they'll be stinking on that show.
SVU.
Oh, but look.
Then you find people in the ground.
So
and
a
they
friend
never
of mine,
stink.
well, Mr. Taggart. Okay, so Mr. Taggart, his dog died, right? He buried his dog right by his back porch where he grows his vegetables. And then he planted vegetables and grew his vegetables on top of his dog. He said, oh, yeah, fertilizes it. Right, man. The vegetables came back, juicier
the minerals is back.
Yeah, it remineralized the ground.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I wondered about that too. But if you got a dedicated spot, a
I
grave
don't
site,
know. It don't seem like you should. It don't seem like you should have your vegetables and stuff that you eat be a graveyard.
Yeah, because there's one
I
thing to use
mean,
manure.
them tomatoes was
Or-
like real big and ripe and like.
Or compost or
the
something.
scriptures say the blood defileth the land, right?
The
Is that talking
blood.
about war, or is it talking about when you die? Because when you die, you're supposed to drain the blood from the person before just bury them.
Supposed to just bury
And
it.
it say
Well,
blood defileth
Yeah,
the
well, you
land.
just gonna bury them. You're not gonna drain the
Yeah.
blood
I'm
out.
not gonna drain it out.
But to me, I feel like there was like when you look at Abraham, right? Abraham went and he got a plot of land. He had all kinds of land, but then he went and bought a plot of land for his wife that died. Why couldn't he just bury her word in part of his thing? He had
He
a
actually did have. A
he went
transaction.
and bought a separate place for those purposes. So it seemed like there should be some type of separation from a graveyard and a place where you're yeah.
That's not.
Well, this it grave?
Yeah, and the grave was included in the thing.
Oh, you're supposed to be even got a grave.
Not even for your man's best friend.
But I would also say that there are a lot of uncleannesses that actually most uncleannesses that don't get canceled out just by time.
Yeah, and this is one of them.
Yeah. So like a woman after she has a baby, she's unclean, but then in order to complete that whole process, she'd have to bring an offering to the temple.
Right.
So
Which is another thing
that
that
she
we
would not
don't,
be able to
yeah.
do. So every single woman that has had a baby
Right.
is ceremonially unclean still because they never got to bring the offering up to the temple. Like
Yeah.
you can't close out that uncleanness because you just
Right.
can't do it. Like,
Right.
There's nothing you can do.
So at the end of the day,
Anything
at the
that
end of the
requires
day, when you
perpetual
look at these things, we have to be able to look to Yeshua, mindful of, again, being mindful of these separations, but understanding that through Yeshua, we're able to be made whole in every way. Because, according to the letter of the law, we can't, we're in a perpetual state of uncleanness, according to the letter of the law. So we have to be able to gain understanding and idea of separation, but not let it be in a place where it's having you bound up about things, because understanding that Yeshua is the way that we're able to be made whole and connected with the Father on every level.
That's why Hebrews that kick against Yeshua, I mean, it don't make no sense.
Right. Because they don't have a way to become made whole.
And this is another, and on the other side is this is why Christians kick against the law.
Right, because there's a lack of understanding. So I don't say that there's now, because I have Yeshua, that there's that I'm supposed to just be however I want to be around deadness. I don't forget about the idea of deadness and uncleanness. I don't forget about that because I have Yeshua. I'm mindful of it. But understanding that there is a way for me to be made whole outside of the letter of the law. But I can't sit up here and just totally just throw this stuff away.
Say I can eat pork now.
Yeah. Whatever. I can just do whatever I
I
want
don't have to go to church on Saturday.
and give it to and give it to the master. Give it to Yeshua, right? Okay, so that being said, if there's any more thoughts or comments on any of that, we will go ahead and stop this for now.